Okay.
Ready for some keys to the game?
I am so ready for keys to the game. Let's start on offense. We always start on offense. That's what we do. So everybody needs to get used to that. So offensive keys to the game. Offensive keys to the game. I'll start with the first one, Brian. And we kind of talked about it already, but it's chunk plays. I think offensively they need to hit their chunk plays. I don't think this offense has it in them to have multiple double-digit drive plays in them or double-digit play drives in them. If they do, this game I don't think is going to be all that close, to be honest with you. I think they're going to need those big chunk plays, and they have the ability to get those big chunk plays from the quarterback's arm to the wide receivers to the skill position, all of it, but they have to hit them, and they have to complete them. That's huge. They're not going to win without a few chunk plays, so that's my first key, Brian.
I don't know if anyone can do that against Wisconsin.
That's fair.
I mean, you go back and look at Alabama. When Alabama played Wisconsin in 2015, they beat them 35-17. Alabama had touchdown runs of 43, 56 yards. They had, they only had really two long drive for touchdown drives in that game that were sustained drives. They had a 6-play, 90-yard drive, which resulted in a 37-yard touchdown run. And they had a 8-play, 88-yard drive. Their next touchdown drive was 2 plays and 56 yards. It was a 56-yard touchdown. They had a 3-play, 27-yard drive that came on a 43-yard run because they lost some yards off penalties. So I think it's kind of what everybody has to do against Wisconsin. It's just not a defense that you're going to consistently just go up and down the field, as you mentioned. And so, yes, my number one key was big plays, but I'm going to add a little bit more to that. You need them early. That I wrote down big plays early because I think early on you need some big plays, whether it's those putting doubt in their mind moments, right? It's that big run from Tyree or Kyron. It's that big play over the top to Austin or Lindsey. It's Michael Mayer up the seam for a big play. It's a big long catch and run from Lindsey or Avery. You need a couple of those early to tell Wisconsin, like, hey, you're going to have to do something different. You get them out of their game.
Sure.
Get them, hey, you want to keep bringing those pressures. That's okay. We just hit a crossing route behind you and our guy ran for 40 yards. You know what I mean? Or you brought this blitz up the middle. We swung Chris Tyree out to the field. We had you outnumbered. He caught the ball. We made our blocks and he ran for 50 yards, right? Or, whatever the case may be, if you get those big plays early, it's gonna get them on their heels. But the other part of it too is those big plays early are going to lead to points early. And I think a key to this game is jumping on Wisconsin early. I think that's always been a key to success for teams is don't let Wisconsin hang around to where their possessions matter. The sooner you can get them into a situation where their ball control becomes a hindrance to their ability to win, is you're setting yourself up for success. Now, if it can be that way the whole game where the ball control works for them, you're playing right into their hands. But if you can get them down a couple scores early, then you're in a situation where it's, hey, our success now has taken them out of their game on offense. That's right where Notre Dame wants to be.
Well, and this is considered a Wisconsin home game too, so I wouldn't be upset if they're taking the crowd out of the game a little bit as well. I have a feeling that Wisconsin is going to travel pretty well, and it's their home game. So why would they not have a rowdy crowd? And if you're at Camp Randall, that's a different conversation. But they're going to play jump around. They're going to do all those different things that they normally do at a home game. So take the crowd out of it early. If Notre Dame has the opportunity to take the ball first, they're going to do it. We know that. That's Brian Kelly's thing.
And I get asked this almost every week. Like, I literally get asked this question by somebody on Twitter every week. And it's fine. I'm not complaining about it. But it's, do you agree with them taking the ball first? And I'm like, yeah, I have no problem. I would, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather be up 7-0 than down 7-0 after the first series.
No doubt.
I don't
want
think
my
the
defense
crowd,
with the lead.
Yes. I don't think the crowd's going to be quite as big of an impact in this one because it's a neutral field game. It's going to be a 50-50-ish type of game. But I think that if you can get look, just read our chats. There's not a lot of confidence in Notre Dame in this game.
No.
And the sooner you can get your crowd thinking like, okay, we got this, and you can get their crowd thinking, uh-oh, we've awoken the sleeping giant. That to me is where you want to be. So I'm Yeah. I think early success is key, obviously.
I love that. That for me, I just want to say that scoring early is my key for every game moving forward, because that's how I think this offense can be, effective, and this team can be effective.
I mean, I think there are certain things you can say, well, you can put that in every game. Hey, if you sack the quarterback 10 times every game, you're going to win, right?
Sure.
The reason I think it's notable even more so in this game is because of the style of play that Alabama run. If you get up on Oklahoma 14-0, they can tie the game up in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? That's the difference.
Sure. Wisconsin doesn't have that offense. It's like getting up on Navy.
Yes, it's going to take them 15 minutes to tie the game up.
That's where that parallel is absolutely appropriate from Brian Kelly. I mean, their offense is not built to come back from a double-digit deficit. It's just not.
Especially if you can get that defense on its heels. That's the big thing for me. That's why big plays are the key early. Now, I will not complain if Notre Dame's first 2 drives are 12-yard drives of punch it into the end zone. You will not hear me complain. So I'm not saying I don't want that. I'd be fine with that. I'm just saying I don't think they can do that. I think big plays are going to be the key to those early scores. And so that's why I say big plays early are going to be the key. What's your second key to success, Vince?
You've got to do your best to keep Jack Cohn upright, whether that's moving the pocket, whether that's just blocking better in pass pro, whether that's getting him out of the pocket on some boot stuff, whatever the case may be. The longer he's upright and has his eyes downfield, the better this offense is going to be. And I know that sounds generic. Of course, having the quarterback upright is where you want to be. But Jack Cohn, when he is at his best specifically, is when he can just go through his reads, find the open man, and get the ball out. It's when he gets rushed, and it's when he has to go to his first read, etc. That's not who he is, and he's not going to be as effective doing that. And so whatever you have to do, whether it's scheme, whether it's being more fundamentally sound, whatever it is, you need to keep Jack Cohn upright. You have to. And if you do, I really like Notre Dame's chances offensively to put points on the board. I really do, because he's going to find one of those skill guys, whether it's a running back out of the backfield, whether it's a wide receiver on a crossing route, whether it's a wide receiver beating a guy deep, whatever the case may be, or even Michael Mayer, because, of course, they're going to try to take him out of the game. Whatever it is, he's going to find the open man. And so you have to keep him upright so that he has the ability to do that.
And I'm going to add on to that, too. I think even if the pressure is coming, Jack's got to be more poised than he was the last couple games.
Sure.
In the face of pressure. He has to understand, now part of that scheme, hey, if we're going to give up pressures and we need to design more plays that give him quicker routes to get the ball out, that's not on Jack Cohn. That's not about being poised. That's about, understanding who you are and scheming him up. But he's got to handle that stuff a little bit better. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying he has to somehow – get out and scramble and run if there's 3 guys in his face. What I'm referring to is when you do get those chances, you can't rush those throws and miss like you did last week when you do have time. And that's what I mean by poised, is when there's going to be 3. It's like we talked about this about Trevor Lawrence in the 2018 Cotton Bowl. Notre Dame's defensive line harassed Trevor Lawrence the whole game. There's only about 5 plays that I can remember him having a clean pocket. But he did on all 5, about 4 or 5 of those plays? He hit big throws, right? And that's my thing is, what are we saying about last week's game? What was it, 10-3 at halftime, right? Mm-hmm. What are we saying about last week's game if Jack doesn't rush and miss Kevin Austin on that deep route or Joe Wilkins on that in cut? Right now, you say, okay, Kevin, got jammed up and Joe should have laid out. Okay, but that's true. But I'm always still going to look to the quarterback first. You got to put that ball on them. You rush those throws because you were concerned about the pressure. That's where I'm coming from with Jack. When those opportunities come, you can't miss.
Sure,
you can't miss, and that ties into my first point, which is those big early plays. My second key, Vince, is I want to see Notre Dame spread Wisconsin out. I want to see you force them to make decisions about how they're going to play you. And, of course, that if you're spreading them out, the offensive line is going to have to play well because they're not going to have as much help. But I want to see them spread Wisconsin out and try to create more creases. That's how I think you can use your speed to your advantage, is to put more Wisconsin defenders in space, put them in more ISOs. And in those matchups, I think, is where they can have some success.
Notre Dame has huge advantage on the outside, in my opinion, because the Wisconsin's linebackers, while they are very good in the box, they're not great outside the box, trying to tackle in space and all of that. Notre Dame has a huge advantage if they can get the ball to the outside. And that kind of goes right into my third key, Brian. So I'm just going to jump right into it. It's that the running backs need to be multiple, right? And they've done a good job of that. Look, Chris Tyree and Kyron Williams are second and third receivers, or so far in receptions. They're doing that, right? But they need to continue to do that. They need to find creative ways to continue to do that. Even something as simple as flare routes, just get them outside, get them the ball in space while they're already running. You know what I mean? I love Chris Tyree or Kyron Williams catching the ball, out in the flat and going. You know what I mean? I'm all for that, right? So the running backs just need to be multiple, whether it's having both of them in at the same time, putting one in the slot, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying abandon the run game. I'm saying be multiple. You need to use their receiving ability.
But it's what we talked about yesterday, Vince. You have to reverse engineer your offense.
Right.
Use your backs in the pass game to hopefully create opportunities for them to have gash plays in the run game. I think if Notre Dame comes out and stubbornly says, we've got to run the ball, we've got to run the ball, we've got to run the ball,
you're going to lose.
Then they're going to not have success.
No, I agree.
They have to say, hey, look, this is who we are right now. How can we build around that? We've got these two great backs that have literally hit home runs in every game we've played, right? How do we take advantage of that and continue to build around that? And then if you're having the perimeter success, that then opens up some of those creases inside. If you're able to hit a couple of those swing passes or a wheel route or something like that, all of a sudden you're free releasing Chris Tyree on a wheel route as you're also coming behind with Kyron Williams on a handoff. That puts them in some really interesting RPO situations, and Notre Dame's run a decent amount of RPOs this year. I've been very pleased by that.
Sure.
Now get a little bit more creative with those with your two backs. Those are things that I want to see from this. And then my third key, Vince, is about as general as it can be, but it's going to be so important. Be physical. Yeah. And I'm talking at every single position. I'm talking about receivers just whooping the Wisconsin deep. I mean, you're in for a 12-round fight at every position. You've got to be ready for it. You've got to mentally be ready for it. Technique-wise,
Wisconsin's going to bring it.
Yeah,
you have to respond.
And they're going to watch the receivers last week, and they're going to be like, "Man, did you see Purdue getting in those guys' heads?" All right, Notre Dame's got to be prepared for that fight, and they've got to bring it in the run game. They got to be physical and off the line. They got to be physical in their routes. They got to be physical when the ball's in the air. The offensive line has to be physical. The backs have to be physical. It's going to be a physical game. You've got to match Wisconsin's physicality and intensity. If you can do that, there's an even greater chance that you're going to win this game. Because, look, if the offensive line still has some technical mistakes, which I expect that they're going to have, they're going to give up negatives. But if they can still be physical, there's going to be 7 or 8 run blocks a game where they're just physical and they get a body on a body, and I said this in a show, Vince, and I want to know if you agree with me. I've seen probably 5 or 6 clean blocked run games all year by Notre Dame. That's about it. And 2 of those have gone for 40-plus yard touchdowns.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Right.
So
a little more consistency.
This game is going to be no different.
Takes off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Just get a body on a body and just be physical with it.
You've got good enough guys behind you that they can make plays if you give them a crease. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Just so be physical is the big one for me.
Yeah.
So let's go defense, Vince. What's your first defensive key?
So my first defensive key kind of goes along with one of my matchups. Kyle Hamilton needs to be an All-American. And, I mean, he has been. Don't get me wrong. He's playing at a very high level. But I want to see him continue that. And so what that means is shutting down Ferguson at the tight end. It means playing center field, not allowing the play action, right? But it also means coming down and supporting in the run. Again, all things that he's shown that he can do. Just needs to continue doing it. He needs to be one of the leaders on that defense, which he is. But All-Americans play like All-Americans in big games. And this is the first big game of the season. And this is going to be a big test because you don't want to get caught with your eyes in the backfield. Because I know he wants to make a big hit, and I respect that. That's awesome. But don't be coming downhill and then getting it thrown over your head, right? That cannot happen. That happened too many times to Wisconsin's safeties against Penn State. That can't happen to Notre Dame's safety against Wisconsin. So All-Americans got to play like an All-American. That's my first defensive key.
So I want to bring up a super chat to kind of lead into some of my points here, Vince, and that's from Jay. Jay, thank you for the super chat. He goes, I kind of like Indy being the underdog in this game. Now go out and play with a chip on your shoulder, show pride, and execute at the level we believe this team is capable of. And he's absolutely right. And we've heard a lot of comments. I told people at the tailgate last week, and Vince, you and I talked about this before last week's game, that the defense had a chippy practice last week because they heard the criticisms of their coach and they didn't like it. I'm hoping that the offense does the same thing when it comes to their offensive line coach and receivers coaches. They get so mad at us that we talk bad about their coaches that they just come out and play great football. That's fine. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
But this is something that I think that this defense is that they're looking at this game saying people don't think we have a chance. We're a touchdown underdog. I think this is the side of the ball where that attitude is going to have to be most prominent. And it's got to lead into, he talked about executing well. So, I mean, these aren't going to be keys to the game. These are just givens. You got to tackle well. You got to be assignment sound. I'm not going to put those as keys because those are givens. But I think that is the tone. This right here is kind of the tone behind which I have a lot of my keys. And that's why we held off putting this super chat up, because I really liked it kind of fitting into my keys. Because my keys are all about about a mentality, Vince, and a mentality of disruption. And that's what this defense is all about. And so that's why my first key is going to really come down to early down success, first down success, which means tackles for loss, which means gains of nothing, which means incompletions, which means getting in the quarterback's face, which means if you can dominate first down, you will dominate Wisconsin.
Absolutely. They're not built for being behind the chains. They are not built for that at all.
No. And so to me, that's a key. And then that is obviously tackling and assignment correctness, but that is playing with an attitude of, I'm going to whip you. You can put 3 tight ends on the field. That's fine, because this guy can't block me. That guy can't block him. That guy can't block him. And we're coming at you. And I think Notre Dame needs to be very good on first down, especially early in the game. For the same reason we talk about, the sooner you can get Wisconsin out of their game, the better. Because this is not a team that plays off schedule very well. What's your key number 2, Vince?
My second key is the front four needs to have their best game of the season up to this point. They need to occupy the offensive line for Wisconsin and not let them get to the second level.
Yeah.
They also need to get in the backfield, right? They need to be able to rush the passer. They need to be able to
right there is how you occupy them.
Yes, absolutely correct.
You got to get their line. Their line has to turn their hips.
Yes.
If they're staying square to the line, they will get to the second level. You've got
to and if they get to the second level, they're going to have a lot of success. They just are, because linebackers can get off blocks, they can do things, but it's going to be too late. And so I need my linebackers. If I'm the defensive coordinator, I need my linebackers running free. And that will be a key to this game. If linebackers can run free, they're going to be dangerous. And this defensive front for Notre Dame can be dangerous. We've seen it. And they need to continue that. They need to take a step in the right direction here, and just not allow those guys to get to the second level. If they do that, I see a lot of success from Notre Dame defensively.
To your point, Vince, this isn't one of my keys, but I'm going to make this point. We're going to know if they're being successful in your second key is going to be determined by how many tackles Kyle Hamilton has. If Kyle Hamilton is racking up a lot of tackles, the odds are that they are dominating Notre Dame in the trenches.
Right.
And they're having to bring Kyle Hamilton down to make a bunch of, second and third level tackles. I 100% believe that, because that means the linebackers are getting eaten up and those type of things. If the defensive line is doing what it needs to do, then J.D. Bertrand and the Mike linebacker positions, the two of them will combine for double-digit tackles.
Absolutely.
And if the linebackers are making a lot of tackles in this game, that's right where Notre Dame wants to be, in my opinion. Because that means they're getting off blocks. They're not – because, hey, look, if these guards get up to the second level against Notre Dame, they're going to eat Drew White's going to get eaten up. We saw it against Alabama last year. If he's not able to run free, he's going to struggle. They have to be able to keep those guys occupied and let the linebackers play hard downhill. Now, that also plays into Marcus Freeman. You don't just let your linebackers sit back and take on guards all game.
You got to activate those guys. Absolutely.
Right. My number 2 key, Vince, is edge success. So it's kind of along the lines that you talked about, but I'm going to focus more on the edge, and it's twofold. Number 1 is Myron Tungavaloa-Mosa has to be dynamic, taking on, setting the edge. They're going to counter, they're going to pull, they're going to run power, they're going to do kickouts and wraps and all this different kind of misdirection stuff. It's technically misdirection. The way Wisconsin runs it, it's more downhill. He's got to be good setting the edge. He's got to be physical. He's got to be assignment sound. That means when he's supposed to spill outside, he's got to come on and wrong arm and take the right angle and spill outside and let your athletes run. When it means setting the edge and forcing that guy back inside, he's got to do it aggressively and meet those guys in the hole. Don't wait for them and then try to catch. And, well, technically you set the edge, but you let them set the edge where they wanted to set the edge. You've got to dictate the tempo, the terms to them, right? So I think that's a big key for him. And then Isaiah Foskey has to dominate on the edge, especially when they pass the football. That's where Adamiola comes into the mix, and it's where Isaiah Foskey comes into the mix. He's got 3 sacks in 3 games. He's been good. They need him to really be disruptive in this game. And that's going to tie into my third point, Vince. So I'm going to bring in my third point because they kind of go together. You got to rattle Graham Mertz.
Yes.
And I think the edge success is going to be a big part of that. You've got to – Adamiola's got to be in his face. They got to be breaking up his passes. But it comes down to, at the end of the day, if he's looking over his shoulder for Isaiah Foskey every time the ball snapped, then because you look, Marcus Freeman's going to dial up some pressures that are going to rattle Graham Mertz and all that, and that's all great. But you got to be careful with too many of those, because if you miss, that zone plays cutting back and there's nobody there.
I love the rattling Graham Mertz thing, because I think he's prone to mistakes when he gets rattled, big time mistakes. And I think that if you can do that, it's going to play right into the hands of the Notre Dame defense. I love that. I love that.
If you get him off his game, that's where the incompletions come. Plus, I think it's going to force, because I've seen him like against Penn State. He got in trouble and he just throws the ball out of bounds. It's like 7 yards behind the line. I mean, not even close to being out of the pocket, not even close to the line, because he just was like, I just need to get rid of the ball.
Yeah, right.
And I think Notre Dame has a better front than Penn State. They have to come out and they have to pin their ears back and say, we are going to attack you. We're going to beat you up front the entire game. And that's where I'm at. That's my final key. What's your final key?
My final key, and I alluded to it when we were talking about the defensive matchups, but I have written down here, it's time for Hart and Lewis to grow up. Right? I think this is a big game for them to show that they're dudes, that they're starters that can be counted on in this defense. Because, again, I'm putting a lot of pressure on those guys so that I can put pressure on the run game.
Need you to be on an island doing damage so we can put more bodies to the run game.
Absolutely. And this is game 4 for Cam Hart, and it's game, I don't know if I had to guess, probably 10-ish for Clarence Lewis, maybe a little bit more than that as a starter. It's time for you young pups to grow up a little bit. You're not sophomores anymore. You're not redshirt, whatever classification they are. You're not that anymore. Right. You have to play like a senior. You got to play like an upperclassman. So I think this is a great opportunity for them to grow up. And we're going to find out either way, I think, what these two are made of, at least right now in this game, because I think there's going to be some pressure put on them. So I think they can do it, but it's time for them to grow up.